Doing a little TIG welding today. I'm going to do some without pulse, just with straight current, and some with pulse, and talk a little bit about where pulse comes in handy. Let's do it. It's hard to make a good looking TIG weld with mill scale on the tubing, so I'm removing it because, for one, it just takes all the fun out if you don't. Wall thickness is right at 100 thousandths, just a little over that, so 1 amp per 1 thousandths will put us at right at 100 amps. That's what we'll be using to start with no pulse. I'm using a Miller Multimatic 220 acdc machine today. I'm using the TIG function, and to start with, I'm not going to be using pulse, just straight current. This machine has an auto set function where you can just select the thickness and the electrode size, but 100 amps is right between two of the settings, so I just turn the auto set function off, totally set the amperage manually. Testing this machine out for a little while now, and so here's what I have done so far with it. I tested the low end side, the low amperage side, by welding some box cutter blades. It was a little hot on the very corner on the start. I went high amperage on DC at about 175 amps, low amperage on AC, running an edge weld like this at really low amps, and then high amps maxed out on AC, welding some 1/4 inch plate, and then I briefly tested the pulse function on an outside corner joint on stainless. Then I used the auto set function to run a standard fillet weld, a T-joint fillet weld. Also experimented with using the auto set function but just dropping down a couple of thicknesses for a vertical uphill weld, and found out that was kind of a trick. Instead of just figuring out settings, just drop down a couple of thicknesses but still using the auto set. Worked out really good for vertical uphill. Let's get some tacks on this square tubing and go ahead and weld it out. I'm just getting really small tacks here. Just really small ones. First one out on the corner like that. And then I'll just, because nothing moved, I'll just go ahead and join everything together with one tack here. And that seems like the best idea to me. So I'm joining like all those members with one tack, holding the post flow over that to make sure it keeps shielding, and it shielded really nice. I always want to have enough tacks, but there's no point in going overboard. This thing's not going to really go anywhere. So I'm just getting a few tacks on each side. I'll do the same thing on this side, and I'll speed it up. That's that, and then maybe one more on the end just to prevent those pieces from opening up if I weld those last or something like that. All right, this corner, I'm going to go ahead and knock the corner off because I think that's a good idea for an outside corner like that on a sharp angle. It just welds better when there's a little area for a bead to go instead of trying to fuse those sharp corners together. Either way works, but I like to add a little filler on carbon steel. It doesn't fuse quite as cleanly as stainless. No deoxidizers in that metal really, and it can sparkle and spew and get porosity by fusing it with no filler metal. So downhill seemed to make sense after knocking that edge off with a flap disc. I'm going to switch over to this cup mainly for filming so I can use that really long stick out and we can make sure to always see the tip of the electrode and the arc. So I'm still got the pulsar off, set at 100 amps. I'm going to weld this miter cut first. And it's got a little small chamfer on it just to give the bead a place to go. But I'm really not trying to get 100% penetration here, because if I do, I'm pulling in oxides from that back side where it's not shielded with argon or anything, and it's going to make the puddle kind of swim around and be squirrely on me, and I don't really want that. So I'm trying to just get some penetration, but not penetrate all the way through. That's my goal here. So I'll take this bead all the way down into that corner tack before I taper off. And I'll hold the post-flow shielding over there several seconds. Now, having the post-flow on for a long time is not necessary on carbon steel. It only really makes a difference when you're going to restart on a bead. Usually carbon steel will be painted after the fact or something like that, so you're just wasting gas a lot of times to like set your post-flow on 15 seconds or something on carbon. Stainless would be a whole nother thing. Other alloys might even be more important, but I'm putting my best foot forward here on this video, having the post flow long enough to where it's nice and shiny. And you can see I've got a nice big shielding area with this Furic number 12 cup here. So this one got a little squirrely on me, and you can see my torch angle is pretty much 90 degrees. I'm only leaned back maybe 5 degrees, and that along with me using a little bit too much amperage, caused me to get some penetration and pull in some oxide from the backside. And that's what makes the bead kind of swim around like that. So it's a little bit irregular. Didn't go as well as the first one. So I think what I'll do is I'll try to modify my technique a little bit on the other side and just show you that real quick. I'm kind of using the other side for arc shots as I film this. What I did here is I just leaned the electrode way back. That usually winds up getting shallower penetration, and that's kind of what I want here. I mean, I want penetration. I want it to fuse. I don't want to be a cold weld, but I don't want to melt all the way through the backside and pull all those oxides in. So that helped. What's going to help even more is switching to the pulser. So the thing with pulse is sometimes it can really control or minimize penetration. That's one thing you can do with pulse. A lot of times on square tubing, whether stainless or carbon, you don't necessarily want to penetrate all through the backside. You'll draw oxides into the puddle and the puddle gets all squirrely like it did with me. So the pulsing, especially with lay wire, can really help you to control the amount of penetration. It's done a lot on stainless steel, especially outside corner joints on stainless steel sheet metal. If you get your pulser set just right, you can zip along on an outside corner joint and really control penetration and not sugar the backside. So in this case, it's carbon steel. I just don't want to pull in all those oxides into the puddle and make it not flow good. So I set the pulses per second to 1.5 pulses per second. Whenever you use pulse, you need more amperage. So I got the amperage maxed out to 210 amps here. And at times, not for this weld, but at times I would be using all of that. But this one I'm maybe 1/2 to 3/4 foot pedal. So again, you can use pulse to your advantage and control your heat and not penetrate all the way through something. And in this case, you can see that bead is going a lot smoother, a lot more regular, a lot more even, because I'm not pulling in oxides from the backside. Oxides make a puddle flow weird. They typically melt at higher temperatures than the alloy itself, and they just make things sluggish. So just to be clear, I went up on my wire size to 332. I just left the wire in the puddle, walked right over it, pulsed at 1.5 pulses per second. Now I'm going to make this long run now. I'm going to try to go the whole way without stopping, so I'm making myself a little makeshift slide glide there. That's a TIG Finger XL on a block of aluminum that's kind of been smoothed off with a sort of a polishing wheel. It glides nice and easy, so I should be able to make this whole run just walking over that rod without any stops and starts. At least that's what I'm going to try to do. So again, 1.5 pulses a second. The machine is set pretty much maxed out. I'm not quite full pedal, but I'm close. What you get when you pulse, you get an average of the background current and the pulse current. So the machine, as I'm welding here, was reading out somewhere in the 140 to 150 range, even though I was set at 210, because I'm getting a high and a low current, so it kind of averages out. Now this might actually be a pretty good joint to not pulse on, but I'm experimenting, always trying to learn. It's working out pretty good. For the most part, the wire is staying in the puddle. It's not breaking contact. Every now and then it does, but for the most part, I've got the settings just about right, and I'm progressing it along at a fairly normal travel speed. It's easy to kind of keep up with. Now I'm taking it all the way into that intersection there, and even though it's pulsing, I'm going to taper off just like normal and hold the post-flow shielding till it times out. Alright, so let's take a look at this thing. You can see where the wire broke contact, it makes a little bit of a variation in the ripple. So I think honestly that would have been better not to pulse on. That one on the right there, it got a little squirrely with me because I pulled some oxide in from the back side. The one on the left I pulsed, and it came out much better. Now the tight angle, I forgot to clean those, and I just got in a hurry, so I think I'm going to try to make a separate video for that, and that lets us talk about when to use a small cup versus a big cup and some other tricks for maybe getting in there and cleaning that after you tacked it up and forgot. That's real. It happens all the time to me. But again, I'll get to work on a whole separate video addressing those issues. That should be interesting. So here's a final beauty shot taken with my phone. It's funny how sometimes a phone will pull out colors better than other cameras. I've been trying to add new products to my store along the way, and it goes kind of slow sometimes because I like to try things out for quite a while, make sure they're good before I add them. Same thing with TIG gloves. I've got some now that I really like. I've had several samples sent to me. Some of them were just okay. Some of them were not very good at all. But these were the clear, very clear winners out of all the samples that were sent to me. I've welded with the sample version of these for several weeks. One thing I like about them is they don't have a seam right there on the palm. And why I say that is because one sample that was sent to me by another vendor, the seam just busted out as soon as I put the glove on. That's no good. I don't want people spending their hard-earned money on junk. But I've tried these, the sample version, for several weeks, and I like them. I feel like they're a good value. They'll hold up. They feel really good. They're really comfortable. They're nice and soft. You can feel the wire.